Are we good? Are we up?
Well, I mean, there's a bit of a delay.
Okay, great.
30-45 seconds.
Wait. It's all right. We're good. We're live. Welcome everyone to the first Loki Community Roundtable. My name's Simon, the project lead here, and I'm joined by a number of Loki team members. And this is our first time doing this, so if there are any technical issues, please bear with us because we are new to this. It's all right. Hope you like the format. If you have any thoughts about the format, and if you have any suggestions about how you might like to see it happen in the future, that would be fantastic. I'm watching the chat, checking your questions as they roll in, and your comments as well. I've also got a bunch of questions that were submitted on Menti. If you're currently watching this stream live, it's probably best if you just post it in the chat because we'll be watching it a little more closely. We've got Jonathan and Lucy from the marketing team helping us moderate the chat today and help me collect some questions, so please do post it. Otherwise, I'm seeing some familiar faces in the chat, which is really great. Seeing JP and a few other names that I recognize, Harold Lewis, David Sims. That's about it so far. But I'm glad to see that you're here. So we'll get started. What I'm going to try and do is grab a couple of questions and then answer them if they're applicable to me, and only me. I will try and answer them. Otherwise, I'll be asking the most relevant people on the team. So why don't we start with a little good round of introductions. I'm not sure in which order you're seeing the people on the chat here. I'm Simon, obviously. Chris, why don't you tell us who you are?
Hi everybody, I'm Chris McCabe, Head of Operations for Loki. One of the founders as well. I kind of wish I wasn't first. But my job is pretty much HR, accounting, a lot of administrative fun stuff, and I kind of make sure that the big decisions get sort of completed. And yeah, that's me.
Sweet. Bowen Doyle, why don't you give us a little intro?
Yeah, sure. So I'm one of the core developers. So I mainly oversee the blockchain development and any improvements to the blockchain, any new features on that side I'm mainly responsible for. And I'll pass it over to Bo.
So I'm Bo. I'm working on the messenger team, and also I do some work with the storage servers. So like how the clients kind of send their messages, how they're stored and propagated across the server, and how they retrieve, that kind of stuff.
Great. All right. Jonathan is just quietly streaming the video, so we won't interrupt him. Josh, I don't think a lot of people have seen your face before or really know a lot about you, so you want to tell people what they need to know?
Yeah, I'm Josh. I popped up in a couple interviews here and there, but yeah, this is probably the first big time people are going to see this Sparche on screen. So I'm Josh. I'm the marketing lead, and I deal with pretty much everything public facing about the Loki project. So yeah, that's a little bit about me.
Great. Key, most of you are probably familiar with. Key's, yeah, tell us a little bit about you.
Yeah, so also one of the founders of Loki and the tech lead at Loki right now. So I kind of write a lot of the papers, help with a lot of the conceptual stuff, help manage the development team. Those are my main kind of roles. Lots of research stuff recently, though. You would have seen some of the papers that we've published. Most of those I've worked on.
Niels.
Yeah, so I'm the newest member actually of the Loki team here, and I pretty much do everything mobile. So getting LokiNet on mobile, both iOS and Android, getting the messenger, working on mobile as well. And yep, that's what I do.
Great. And finally, last but not least, Ryan joining us today from the USA.
Hi, I work on LokiNet and the Loki launcher, which is a little manager that keeps LokiNet and all the various Loki suite of software up and running for service nodes.
Fantastic. We will also shortly be joined by Jason, but he's having some technical difficulties at the moment. But most of you know him as Jaegerman. but the foundation recently decided to bring him on as a full-time software engineer. So he is working with Doyle on a lot of the core blockchain sort of stuff. He recently wrote a paper about Blink, which I have seen some chat about in the last couple of days since he sort of first wrote that. So it looks very good. So in fact, that's actually one of the questions that JP has put up. Can we chat about Blink roadmap to production? Yes, we can, but the man who is doing it is currently not in this chat, so we will save that until he gets here. We might start with another question, though. Let's go with, how do you hire your developers? At Loki, we have a bit of a process. We have had hundreds of candidates that we've reviewed over the last sort of 18 months. And we think we've got a pretty good process, and I'm going to pass off to one of the developers who is usually the first person that anyone gets an interview from. We start with a coding interview, so maybe Doyle, you can run us through how that process works.
Yeah, sure. So the coding interview is pretty stock standard. You come in, well, we do it online, I guess, mostly. And it's mainly, I guess the main difference here is we test for your ability to build an architecture. So to build a solution instead of an algorithm problem. Because you'll be working on a small team, and so we're interested in seeing people who can build software from the ground up and also iterate on software. That's the main thing. And after the technical, obviously, you have one more interview where you will talk with some of the leads, and I guess you just go through and just have a chat, and they get a sort of aptitude or a feel for your ability to fit in with the team. That's mainly how we hire developers here.
Yeah, we had a few iterations, but I think the process has been pretty simple. And it's been really effective as well at sort of figuring out who is a good developer and who is not. And it's been really successful in that regard, given that we have such a fantastic team of really high quality developers. I think it speaks for itself. So yeah, usually we put job postings up locally here in Melbourne, Australia, but we also use a website called AngelList, which is kind of like this startup job website where you can post jobs for a number, like essentially whatever you want, but it's mostly, software engineers and marketing people and that sort of thing that a lot of startups require. And that's kind of a slow burn that's always happening in the background. We sort of put a job posting up and leave it for a couple months and review a bunch of candidates and maybe interview like 2 or 3 of them, and then maybe one of them's good. And we have also done some direct reaching out to particular developers that we've been interested in, and also some other strange things. Maybe Doyle, you can tell us a bit how you got hired, because you were actually sort of developer number 1 on the team.
Yeah, that's correct. There was a bit of a bootstrapping process. So the chicken and egg problem, like how do you find the first developer when you have no developers? And so it was a bit of blind luck. I frequented a game development Discord, and I was helping out, I guess, or spectating with discussion and C++ discussion. And just one day, one of these guys popped up in the chat. It was Josh's idea to go check out this game dev Discord to reach out for developers. And I just so happened to be in Sydney. I was looking for a job, and I said, why not? Let's go for it. So I applied for this job down in Melbourne for this new blockchain startup. I had no idea it was legit or not, but things turned out well. I turned up. They gave me a trial, an interview, and that sort of process. They tried to get a feel for if I could program in the first place, or I was just all talk. But it turned out well, and then after a couple of months, I transitioned in, and I became the company's first developer. It turned out well.
Yeah.
I think
That
it was a
very,
period
very
of
early days.
there was like in just 2 weeks we met Doyle and he moved his entire life from Sydney to come and live in Melbourne and work on the project. That was pretty crazy.
I think the way that we used to kind of do things was, at least for our core developers that we took on, was we'd try and get them to solve issues that were present in Monero So kind of like good first issues for Monero developers, and then merge them back to Loki. But it seemed like that could only really last for so long, because we ended up solving a lot of the smaller issues in Monero, and then it was all that was left was like the really big and hard stuff. So we had to go on with like a different hiring strategy after that.
Cool. All right. Well, we'll move on to the next question now. We have a question in the chat. Do you guys have any plan on adding atomic swaps on the Loki roadmap? Okay, why don't you tell us a story about our relationship with atomic swaps?
Yeah, we've looked into stuff like it's pretty complex, atomic swaps. Like you need a whole bunch of stuff that Monero doesn't have, or that Bitcoin has, that's really hard to implement in Monero because of the privacy features of Monero. I believe that there's a couple of signature schemes that are being looked into right now by the Monero Research Lab that might enable this, or that will enable this actually. But it's still like very early kind of research topics and not really fleshed out fully yet. So like in the future potentially, but I don't think we'll be doing any innovative research, at least in the next kind of 6 months, to look into atomic swaps. We're more kind of following our roadmap of like Blink and service nodes, and kind of going down that path instead of doing cross-chain atomic swaps.
That's cool. We'll go back to the Menti questions now. Sorry, there's quite a lot of questions here. I'm trying to find something that sort of flows on nicely. What is Tom's role as a developer on your team? He does not make nearly as many contributions on GitHub as your other developers. What a contentious question, but it's a good one. Key, you were the one to first reach out to Tom. Why don't you tell us that story?
Yeah, so like I think maybe Tom was actually one of our developers before Doyle, or
Yeah,
I'm not really sure. Like I think he was the first person we ever kind of associated with or talked to. And he obviously had a large role in the building of Monero very early on. So you can see, like, even if you go to Monero now, you can see that he's got a ton of contributions kind of in the early years. But really what he's doing now more at Loki is kind of like more as an advisory position. So he helps us a lot with like how we should structure things that we do on core. And now he's kind of stepping more into helping with LokiNet stuff as well. So you often don't see some of his contributions because either he's contributing through other people, or maybe he has his own tree that we're pulling and putting into our branches, or he's just giving advice. Yeah, he's been a really good addition to the team just because of his like wealth of knowledge about how Monero was built. And yeah, he just helps a lot of the core developers along with how, like, where to look for things.
Tom doesn't work full time though. He's kind of got a bit of a flexible schedule, and but lately he's been working on some failure case messaging inside LokiNet, which is actually really useful because it's going to allow us to be able to be able to find out more about what is wrong with LokiNet anywhere along any given path. So in LokiNet, you build a path, and so you've got 1, 2, 3 computers ahead of you before wherever you're actually connecting to. And at the moment, if any one of the paths in front of you fails, there's actually no way of them being able to pass information back to you and tell you what went wrong. So that's actually functionality that Tom is building in, so that if something does go wrong ahead of the first node that you're talking to, you can actually like backtrace through the path and figure out what exactly happened. So it's a really cool feature that he's working on at the moment. All right. What kind of software development methodology does Loki implement? For example, agile, waterfall, etc. I can tell you straight away, it's not waterfall. We don't do things sequentially here at Loki at all. I would definitely say it's some kind of agile-like methodology, but it's really based around a lot of sort of medium-term goals and project teams rather than the whole company working towards one objective, because there's so many different product streams happening at the same time. We've got Loki Messenger, we've got the blockchain stuff, we got LokiNet, and a few other minor tasks as well. having a really strict methodology really doesn't. We've tried to implement a few different project management sort of methodologies across the whole company before, and it's really just not been effective. The whole LokiNet team is remote, so that brings in its own set of complexities. So they kind of organize themselves in their own way. And then here in the office in Melbourne, we have a couple of different things that we do. We've been experimenting with different sort of methodologies as we've gone along, and we seem to be settling on something that more closely resembles a sort of agile sort of framework where we set a specific goal and really go for it. We lay out all the tasks and everything, but really it's all about concurrency and making sure that if we're working towards a specific goal, are we getting the stuff that will block other people out of the way first so we can work on a bunch of different things at once with a bunch of different people. So that's the answer to that question, I suppose. Still seems that Jason's having some difficulty again. He should be in shortly. He is around. He is sending a lot of messages at the moment going, help me. But we'll get there in the end.
I'm here now.
Oh, hello, Jason. How are you?
I'm pretty good.
That's great. I'm glad to hear it. So we actually had a question for you if you're ready for it.
Yeah, sure.
So the question was, what does the roadmap to the deployment of Blink look like?
Well, the Blink design is out, of course, as lots of people know. The roadmap to development, basically our target on that is to get it into the next hard fork after Hefty. So I guess that'll most likely be version 5. But implementation, it'll, as it proceeds, there'll be interesting parts. We'll get on the test net before then, and we'll see what happens.
Great. Okay, we'll go to the chat now. Okay, never mind. Yes, we have a question from Skeleton4. You recently donated $15,000 for the Monero Research Lab. Is there anything you were hoping to have discovered? I think Key was pretty involved in that process. I know I keep palming questions off to you, Key, but maybe you can talk about this one.
Yeah, really our goal with giving money to the Monero Research Lab was we were kind of a little bit concerned that they wouldn't reach their funding goals. And that was kind of a big concern when the price of Monero was really slumping kind of down to kind of the $45 range. So we really wanted to make sure that their funding was secured and they didn't have to worry about any of that kind of stuff. Because obviously any research that happens in the Monero Research Lab is usually going to be relevant to what Loki is doing as well, especially on, for example, like efficiency savings or, protocols which reduce communication between nodes. Like that's all applicable to Loki as well. So I don't know if we had a specific goal going into it. More it was just to secure the future of the Monero Research Lab and their continued kind of space, and also just kind of build a stronger relationship with them. We will be heading down to the Monero conference I will be heading down to the Monero conference on the 20th, I think the 20th to the 23rd of this month, and just going there to connect with a couple of people. Actually, another point on the multi-sig, I know I didn't go into much detail, but I'll post a link in the YouTube chat, which kind of talks about adapter signatures, which are looking like the best way to go for multi-sig on Monero, which is a concept developed by Andrew Polster for Bitcoin Core. So this basically allows you to put arbitrary data in signatures, and then you can do a multi-signature, which basically allows you to seamlessly do atomic swap without actually adding any extra data on chain. You actually stuff it all in the signature. So I'll put that link in the chat as well.
Great. Okay, we've got a bunch of questions rolling in now. And we will also, I kind of want to change it up a bit. I feel like so far things have been pretty development heavy, and there's a lot of questions that aren't necessarily like directly related to development. So let's go with, can you give some details about your future marketing plans when product will launch? And we also had another question sort of related to that just come through now, which is when will Loki Messenger go live? So maybe Josh, you can talk a bit about our marketing plans and sort of product launches that are coming up and that sort of thing.
Yeah. So the goal has always been that closer to the launch of our products, we put more money into or more resources into marketing, and we go harder with marketing. And we're set to do Loki Messenger and Loki Net towards the end of this year. So as we get closer to that, obviously we're going to do more stuff with influencers, because really word of mouth is the best tool that you have. People are much more likely to install an app if their friend or someone they trust has told them about it, rather than if they're just scrolling through the app store and they see anything. So everything that we're going to be doing is really just focused towards getting the word out there. So yeah, we'll be doing a lot of influencer stuff. We'll be doing a lot more press releases, because the other thing is that when you actually have a product coming to fruition, journalists are a lot more interested in talking about what's happening, because there's actual like a use case happening in the world. Whereas if you don't have anything kind of close to what they're talking about, they're not really interested in writing a story about that. So we're really just going to be focusing more about spreading brand awareness, and we're going to be trying to get the product into as many hands as possible so that people can share it around and tell other people about it. I guess everything up to that point is really just focused on making sure that when people actually get to download these apps, they're at a standard that's comparable to any alternatives currently on the market, because there's no point actually building something and giving it to people and then them going, well, I'm just going to use Signal instead or use Telegram instead.
Cool. Yeah. Yeah, we're really excited to have announced the sort of first release of Loki Messenger coming out at this hefty Heimdall hard fork in July. But we'll have test versions of it out that will work on the 26th of June is the current date that we said. And that's really exciting because we'll actually be able to get, a real front end into the community's hands. This won't be so much for like a wider public sort of thing, just because it's not really the final product that we've all hoped and dreamed for, with all of the privacy properties that we've been talking about for the last 18 months. But it does have a lot of the decentralization features, a lot of the distribution features, and it's going to have the same front end as well. So they're all really important things, and we really need to start getting it into real people's hands to be able to actually test and upgrade the user experience, so that when we actually do get to the end of the year, when it's ready with LokiNet integrated and it's got all these privacy features, it's actually a good app and it feels nice and it does all the things you want it to do. It tells you as much information as you want to know without going into too much detail. There's a lot of like complexities here that we haven't really started digging into yet, because we've been so focused on actually just getting the system together. So hopefully at this release, we'll actually be able to work with the community and actually build a really great product, sort of in a little bit more of a collaborative sort of sense. So yeah, Loki Messenger will be live on the mainnet, on the real service node network in late July if everything goes to plan. So that's really, really exciting. What else do we have here? I'll try and answer some questions that have been coming up in the chat, because I appreciate you guys being here. How does Loki envision reaching out to attract users for services who may not be as conversant with cryptocurrency? I think that's a really great question. The Loki Messenger and LokiNet are designed in such a way that you don't even need to know what cryptocurrency is, or even that the Loki coin exists, in order to first start using it. It's only when you start digging into the deeper features of it do you actually need to care. So I think from that perspective, that will be really good, because there's going to be this really low barrier to entry, in that it'll be very similar to other apps that they've probably used of the same type. So for example, with the Loki Messenger, while eventually it'll have a wallet integrated into it, and it'll also be able to set up your username using the Loki name service by burning Loki on the chain. By default, you don't need to care about that. All you need to do is just copy your address and send it to the person you want to talk to, and then you're done. And you can just start using it like any other chat app. But do you have any other thoughts on this, Josh?
Yeah, so that's another thing that's good to point out is that when we also get closer to this, the type of content that we're going to create is going to change. At the moment, it's very much, while we're in the development phase, focused. It's more highlighting the development and the technical aspects of our project, because we kind of want as many hands helping us as possible while we're building. But yeah, as we get closer to actually having something tangible, we're going to be targeting more of your average users, and in a way that they don't actually need to know what's going on in the back end of things. So the content's going to change up. You will see a lot more animations and that sort of stuff to make it really easy, and basically stuff that if all you wanted to do is never really paid attention to the currency and you just want to use these applications for what they are, it's going to be super easy for you to do that. Yeah.
Great. I've also got another question that's come up. Will it be possible for there to be a Loki community group within Loki Messenger at some point? We were actually talking about this yesterday, and we made a post about the different sort of models that we could go with for group chats within Loki Messenger. And I'm pleased to say it looks like we will probably be able to get some hard-coded group chats happening inside Loki Messenger when you first get it at the first release. So we got to do a little bit more confirmation of this and sort of work out what the development timelines are going to be. But even if we don't make the specific hard fork date, this is actually a client side thing. So we can actually, at the moment, the priority has been to get all of the back end stuff for Loki Messenger working, so that, because it was working previously, but LokiNet, it was all going over LokiNet, and that actually solved a lot of problems. Including like firewall punching and all of this other stuff that we now have to think about, because we're now using just ClearNet IP addresses instead of LokiNet. So we've been focusing on re-engineering a little bit of the Loki Messenger backend, a little bit of the storage server backend, to make that possible. And as soon as that's done, all the upgrades that will happen to Loki Messenger from here can actually just happen. Like we can just roll out an update, push it on the App Store, push it on the desktop client, and then upgrade it, and then all of a sudden you'll have all this new functionality and this new user experience, and there's no hard forks required because the back end won't change. And one of the changes that we're thinking of making to the client side is making it possible such that you can, there'll be a chat server out there that can interact with Loki Messenger, such that you can have these really, really big chat rooms. And we want to make the default experience in the first release such that when you download it, you're not just there by yourself and you've got no contacts, no friends, no nothing. You have to kind of go, who can I talk to try this out? And they've got to be online if you want to have a conversation. So that's a bit of an average user experience for testing purposes anyway. So what we're going to do, we're going to try and do instead by the next release is just by default have a couple of group chats, one being Loki and one just being like a random one or something like that. We haven't really decided yet. But basically it means that straight away there'll be, in much the same way that we have the Loki community Telegram chat, there'll be a Loki community chat on the Loki Messenger as well, straight out of the gate, ideally. So that's something that we're really, really aiming for. Okay, what else have we got here? I'm trying to think of ones we can get the rest of the team involved with now, other than just Key and Josh. Okay, so here's an interesting question. This is probably a good one for Ryan. Do you plan on limiting network traffic in any way? For example, someone builds a CryptoKitty-like snap that takes all the network resources. Ryan, can you probably speak to sort of how bandwidth provision is regulated across the network?
This has been a concern of the LokiNet team since day one. We've always had that in the back of our mind, is how can this be abused? And the main thing is we've been trying to put sensible rate limits in, and sometimes we have to pull those rate limits out as we fight with this reliability concept. But we do have a model to protect from some of that, not all of that, as there are some very hairy problems that we have to deal with and trade-offs we have to make decisions on. And some of those trade-offs we'd even like to, put in a config file so users can make those choices for themselves. We try to keep the network with some sensible defaults so that it won't use everyone's capacity immediately. And of course, the network will need more tuning over time.
Yeah, I might just jump in there as well. The main thing kind of we're doing on the client side is proof of work per path build. So this isn't actually implemented yet. It's kind of a standby feature if everything goes wrong. We can actually implement per path build that each client makes. You have to do a small proof of work, which you'll attach as you extend your path out. So that actually will rate limit how fast a client can actually build a connection to, say, one of these really popular services. But even if we were to look at just something like Tor or the Tor network, we still see, like, you can technically use any kind of traffic on Tor that you want to. Like, there's many popular web services that get used on Tor that don't eat up the entire bandwidth of Tor. So it is somewhat difficult to take the whole bandwidth of the whole network just with one application, and especially because it's running off chain as well. So it's as fast as the speed of the internet can kind of relay the traffic. So it's not like CryptoKitties where there's a hard limit and the limit is the amount of transactions per second that can go on chain. It's just the speed of the internet at this point.
Yeah, great. I've got a question that's just come up in the chat, and was also one that was submitted through Menti actually, so we might go into it. I think it's a pretty interesting question. We haven't really talked a lot about it. I've got a couple ideas. For non-cryptocurrency traders, how does Loki envision making Loki payments for services such as Loki name service registration readily available to anyone without them having to join an exchange? So the question is kind of, you need a bit of Loki to be able to get a name on the Loki name service, and you probably want to be able to do that from within the app as well. Do we want to force users to have to go onto some exchange, register for it, have Bitcoin already, which means they've got to go and buy the Bitcoin and then buy the Loki and then put it back on their wallet and then buy the domain? Obviously, that's very atypical for a typical app user experience, and that's something that could be addressed quite easily by having in-app payments, and then the Loki Foundation or someone has an automatic processor that will sort of do all the stuff in the background for you and just send you Loki. But there's obviously problems with that as well, because then we're introducing this centralized point of failure within the app, although it's not critical to the core functioning of the app. So, I mean, that would personally be something I'd be comfortable implementing, but really it's a question for the community, because with a lot of these design decisions where we're kind of considering whether or not it would be a good idea to have part of the software that relies on some central organization, even if it's the Loki Foundation, in order to function. Like, is that something that we want? Do we want to sacrifice that decentralization? I think for this particular case, I think the answer would be probably, because this is a non-critical feature. People can still go out and get their Loki from wherever they're going to get it and put it on their wallet and use it as per usual. You don't have to use the service, but there could be, this is one of those questions that I've kind of been struggling with. Like, there are a number of features that we can add to Loki Messenger that will improve the user experience, but will require an element of centralization to be introduced to the periphery of the service. The core service is still always going to be decentralized, but there are certain things that we can do to make it slightly more usable and more enjoyable for people to use, but they do require an element of centralization. I don't know what the community appetite for that kind of thing is. So maybe if you guys see this, you can post in the chat now, or if you're watching it at a later time, come into the Discord and let us know your feelings on it if you feel strongly about it one way or the other. That'd be really great.
I think that question was actually from Technical Tumbleweed, and he suggested that, or it was some community member, and I think I remember them suggesting that we could integrate with CryptoWolf, because CryptoWolf actually already processes payments from credit cards directly into Loki. So that would be like an interesting service to actually integrate into one of our applications if we were able to work out some kind of deal with them where someone could directly purchase Loki with only one step required, which is like kind of very similar to how a normal application would work.
Yeah, I'm kind of thinking that, like, because Google Pay and Apple Pay are actually pretty good at doing this sort of thing, we could find a way to pipe those funds that are collected from there into something like CryptoWolf. So yeah, that could definitely be an option. All right, we'll continue with some more questions. Okay, This is a fun question for Key, but I'm actually going to ask Niels about it because he's done this plenty of times before. What are some of the challenges to getting an app approved in Apple's store or the Google Play Store?
Right. Yeah, so both the Apple App Store and the Google Play Store have a set of guidelines that you need to conform to when you want to get an app into their store. And with something like, with an app like ours, that can be a bit tricky because we're doing stuff in the crypto direction. And they have some guidelines specifying that you basically need to be careful when you're doing stuff like that. But what you can do is you can, there are ways around that as well. Basically, you just need to convince somebody, the reviewer at Apple, that your app is legit and you can get into the App Store. So I don't think it'll be a problem for us, but it's a bit tricky sometimes.
Yeah, great. All right. I'm just trying to think, like, what would a good question for Bo here be? Because he's the only one that hasn't answered a question yet. And maybe Chris, actually. Oh, yeah, Chris. I've got a good question for you. Will Loki consider offering paid for consultation and transition services to assist large groups or organizations migrating over to using the privacy services offered by Loki?
That's definitely something that we have considered. It would be sort of a secondary thing after we get a lot of our services out. So maybe next year. Actually, if any companies out there and they want to consider this, we'll definitely speak to you now, pretty much straight away. We'll talk to you about it. But this isn't something that we can probably offer until later in the year, until we've got a lot of our services rolled out, is my opinion on that.
Yeah, I think
considered in the past.
That's definitely, if Loki Messenger and LokiNet do achieve any sort of traction, you can look to the Tor Foundation or what they do in this regard. And yeah, they do have a lot of assistance programs and outreach programs to try and get, news organizations and activist groups and all of that sort of thing onto the system. We actually considered going to a conference coming up fairly shortly called RightsCon in Tunisia, which is a sort of global human rights conference where there's a lot of technologists and activists and other sort of people. Decided not to go in the end just because nothing's ready, and it's kind of I thought it would be a bit of a disappointment to go, hey, look, we got this really great product and it does all these things and it's going to keep you safer on the internet and allow you to have secure communications and human rights, la 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 la. But given it wouldn't actually be available to them at that time, I thought it would probably be best to save it for next year when it's actually got a bit of maturity about it as well. And there's a lot going on here at the office right now. So I didn't want to take, because it's literally like 40 hours of flying each way there, and it would be for a 2-day thing because it's in Africa and I'm in Australia, and that's a long way to go. So, yeah, anyway, that is something that we do want to do in the future though.
Yeah, once we can actually demo and actually show people exactly what you can and can't do with the network, it would definitely open up a lot more doors, hopefully, as well.
Especially if they can literally just go into the App Store as they're sitting there on the conference floor, open it up and send me a message. And like that sort of interaction that's immediately possible when it's actually a deployed app is so much more effective. And I can't wait to be able to do that. All right, I got a good one for you here, Mr. Bo. I just lost it though, so bear with me. Bowden, how often do we have team meetings to hash out plans and ideas? Can you tell us what the sort of back-end structure for our meetings is?
Yes. So we have weekly team meetings on every Australian Tuesday or American Monday for the dev team, and then some of the peripheries also hang out to kind of get a feel for where we're heading. And then kind of going back to the agile question, we also, as teams, kind of coordinate ourselves. So if we feel like before the dev meeting is coming up, we kind of need to set some more goals because we've achieved everything we had planned. We'll kind of just like swing on off into the cheeky little meeting room in the corner and plot some stuff out. Is that the the whole question? I can't remember the second half.
Yeah, what are the other types of meetings that we do?
Oh yeah, we also got like, I don't know if they're strictly monthly, but it seems about monthly all hands meetings where we'll try to get every single member of the Loki team all together in one big conference room, or like in a meetups call for the people overseas. Because it's hard to lining up everyone's timelines. We got like America, like even across America, they got all sorts of different times. I think we got a bit of England in there. I don't know. Canada now.
Yeah, the all hands meetings are a sort of a newer thing. Can you mute yourself while I talk? Because I can hear myself. Thank you. That's better. Yeah, so we started doing this thing a few months ago called the all hands meetings. Previously, everything had been sort of ad hoc, but we were doing the weekly dev meetings. And now we've introduced these kind of big, sort of monthly. They're like maybe every 4 to 5 weeks, we do an all hands meeting depending on the schedule. And we basically just review everything that we've done in the last month and then kind of set some big goals and sort of set like a really specific sort of short-term goal that we're all going to like try and orient ourselves towards. This month, it was all about getting this non-LokiNet version of Loki Messenger out. And so far, it looks like we're really going to smash that goal, which is really exciting. And then we kind of have a bigger, more like long-term view. So we also talk about, we're aiming to have LokiNet on Loki Messenger out by this date in months down the track, and how can we better position ourselves to get there and that sort of thing. So, and there's also now, I believe, there has been for quite some time a LokiNet meeting that happens the day after the regular dev meeting, and they get together and discuss more LokiNet related stuff, because a lot of the stuff that they're doing tends to get into the weeds very much, and they are not in the same office, so it's really useful for them to get together and discuss those sort of things. So we have a fair few meetings, but we try and keep them short and sweet, because obviously, you can achieve a lot by talking, but you can achieve a lot more by working. You want to strike a good balance between the two. We don't want to be one of those companies where employees feel like they're being dragged through the mud because they have to have like 3 meetings a week for various reasons, and they don't feel like they need to be there a lot of the time. So try to be careful about managing that. Yeah, and as I said, there's also different product teams, so it gets quite difficult. And then the marketing team has their own meeting that happens every week as well. And then we've got, actually, does anyone in this office here have anything on the whiteboards that they don't want people to see right now? Key, I know you're pretty sensitive about that.
Yeah, I think my corner is like filled with stuff that's like future plan.
Cool. Well, I can't see it from here because of a big.
I might actually have a private key open on my desk.
Do you actually?
Yeah, the one for the audit.
I don't see it.
Good. Go for it then.
Let me just check.
What is Simon doing? Is he gonna show the
because we're
office?
doing an audit with E1.
No, we all good. We all good.
I think he wants to show the poop wall.
Yeah, I mean, why not, right? I will. This could be a little bit
office
difficult,
tour?
but we'll do a little quick office tour while we're here. Why not? I thought we were going to do like a longer video about this, like a proper one. So
I think we are going to.
We will, but for now, I'll just
Little
show
sneak
you
peek.
how this all works. So we got Niels here. So we got Maxim here. This is where the streaming's all happening from. This will get really
Simon,
tricky.
the webcam that you're holding is not being used.
Oh.
It's just pointed towards you.
Yeah, okay. Well, we'll start again. Okay. Niels, Maxim, and then Jonathan. This is where all the streaming is happening from. And
Go a little bit slower.
Go slower? Okay, but I don't. Okay, fine. I'll go slower.
This
is the cute little corner where these two are hanging out.
That's
and
where they
then,
normally sit together.
This is where the Flex Dapps are. They're another company that we like, that we hang out with sometimes. And then I'm going to interrupt Chris and Josh because I can.
Get out of here!
We won't make it out.
Yeah. So that's the Loki office. Yeah. Hope you guys enjoyed that.
Hope you guys enjoyed the amount of plants.
Get back to it now. Yeah, it's a bit of a jungle in here.
Show them the
It's
poop.
really great.
Show them the poop.
People.
Oh, the wall of poop. Okay, so can you see that well? Probably. So this here is a thing called the wall of poop, and it's kind of like a security competition kind of thing. We reset it every month, and basically, if someone walks away from their computer without unlocking it, and you manage to get on their browser and type the word poop into Google, they get a cross next to their name, and if the person with the most amount of crosses next to their name at the end of the month has to wear the poop hat. Where is the poop hat? I don't know where the poop hat is.
Someone might have stolen it. I'll make another one.
Okay. It had a little poop emoji on it.
It's a beautiful hat.
Yeah. Anyways, so that's the office. Just get myself set up here. Anyone got any more questions for now that they want to answer?
I think there was a question about the audit. Like, have we been audited yet, or has the foundation been audited yet?
What a timely question that is. We actually yesterday, some of the people from Ernst & Young EY came into our office and audited our cryptocurrency wallets. So yes, we are currently being audited for the 17-18 financial year, and it's going fine for now, I guess. Just trying to get myself set back up here. Does any okay. There are a heap of questions in the document, so I'll just try to get that back up now. Yeah, what are you saying, Chris?
I was going to say, in regards to the private keys that were there, there's nothing in that wallet. I just didn't want people messing it up with transactions, because then EY might be angry at us. That's all. There's nothing to take there.
Yeah, we was basically just showing them that, you know, the information that we gave them was correct, and they can verify that the wallets in question do in fact belong to us, and that sort of thing. So, okay, I got the questions back up now. For Key, what is the present thought regarding continuing with merged mining once checkpointing is introduced? This is a saucy topic that me and Key just love.
Yeah, so it's an interesting one. Actually, I don't know if you're up to date with this, Simon, but there was a pull request that just recently got merged into dev, which explicitly disallows merge mining. So yeah, that was yeah, that was you should have been following the GitHub. It's only in dev, it's not in master now. But yeah, Jason raised an issue probably about a week ago that's on the GitHub. To explicitly disable merge mining, at least for now. I'm kind of more on the side that we should disable merge mining, and that's kind of the position that I've supported as well. My kind of thoughts around this is that once checkpointing is enabled, we should move to either a permutation of prog proof of work or RandomX, which have this idea of like the block hash changing the hashing algorithm every X period. And I think we should kind of do something like that. There's a lot of ideas around in the hashing kind of world. Also, TurtleCoin, I think, is doing some Argon 2 thing, which is like this provably memory hard hashing algorithm. Like, we've looked into a lot of stuff at this point. But the main consideration that we're making right now is like checkpointing removes the need somewhat to have a hash rate for security. And the thing we need now is like reliability in our hash rate or predictability, so that the hash rate isn't going up wildly up and down, because that will change the block time for people. So like when you send a transaction, obviously you want it to be in like, you know, a couple of blocks time. And if the block time is like 20 minutes, then it's a little bit annoying. That becomes less of an issue with Blink, because Blink just allows you to instantly confirm without actually being in a block. But yeah, it's still a bit of an annoyance. So we still have to choose a hash rate that's not going to fluctuate massively. And there's some thoughts about that. Simon probably has some stuff to say about merge mining too.
I really like merge mining. I think it's been really great. it's a very complex topic. We could be here for a long time. We don't have a lot of time left, so maybe we'll do another a video about it or something like that in the future if people are interested in it. Yeah, I think we should like try and round this out as best we can. There's a lot of unanswered questions here, unfortunately. I tried to pick ones that sort of branched across a few of them, so hopefully you guys got a little bit out of it as well. But given that this is kind of we do have this live chat here, I just want to point out Bauma Crypto 2.0 Loki painting on the wall from D. Awesome to see that all the way over the water, you guys, Loki rocks. Thank you very much. We do have I don't know if you noticed during the tour, but we do have a little wall over there with every sticker that we've made of the Loki community gods up on the wall, and a bunch of art that people send us, and we really love this stuff. So keep sending it through.
A coffee cup from Gregor. Ooh,
oh yeah, yeah.
Cheers, Gregor.
Our lovely French community member LG Gregor keeps sending us lovely things like phone covers and mugs and that sort of thing. It's really great. We love it so much. Okay, we'll probably do one more question and then we'll call it. So I'll try and pick a good one here. All right, this is probably a good question for all of the developers, actually. You have a lot of products, consumer-facing and developer tooling. Do you think you were taking on a lot of technical overhead? Do any of you guys feel strongly about this question? Why don't you tell? Yeah.
I'll just say that we've tried to embrace existing communities where we can, and I think the only thing we've really went greenfield on was LokiNet, because it's such a core to our mission.
I feel like each product is actually not too difficult to manage in and of itself. I mean, yes, there needs to be someone constantly maintaining each of the products, but once they've been set up, they've been relatively easy to maintain, so long as they're not being upgraded all the time. I think probably one of the more difficult ones is with the blockchain side of things. Maybe Doyle, you can tell us a little bit about what it's been like to consistently upgrade the blockchain and all the wallets and stuff that come along with it.
Yeah, keeping things up to date is a pretty big undertaking because there's so many platforms out there nowadays, and there's a lack of basically blockchain developers or crypto node developers, actually, for that sense. And so we're always on the lookout for like good devs that have experience in blockchain or cross-platform experience. That's where Niels comes in with his mobile experience. But yeah, we're still on the lookout for more. Like, we obviously need more core devs. There's features that we want, and with these features need to have, we want like feature parity on all the other cross-platforms as well, and that's a big undertaking in itself. We've been struggling, and if you guys know any good devs, we're always hiring. You can always reach out at team@loki.network or any of the communication channels. If you've got the skills, then we're very interested in bringing you on the team, because we definitely need more hands.
Great. Yeah, I think things will probably be not as difficult as far as technical overhead with the messenger in particular, because, like, as I said, the client can move independently of the blockchain, but anything that sort of touches the blockchain is a bit of a pain to manage, which is actually why it takes so long to do each iterative upgrade. You can't just push something out and then it'll work. It's kind of like everything has to follow along with it. So every wallet, every node, every pool, everything has to behave well with every upgrade. Otherwise, it just all falls apart. So it's actually quite a difficult coordination issue. But Loki Core is probably the hardest thing that we have to upgrade. And once we have the service node architecture that will allow us to sort of enforce what versions of stuff people are using and what features they need to be operating on different service nodes as well, upgrading that will be a little bit easier as well, being able to forcibly push new features onto LokiNet and Loki Messenger as well if there's any backend changes required there. So yeah, I mean, there is a lot of technical overhead, but as you can probably tell from today, we're no small team, and we've got the resources to be able to manage that and continue to expand that. So we're not too concerned about it. All right. I think that is getting close to an hour now, and I think we said we wouldn't let this run more than an hour. So thank you all for coming. It's been really fantastic spending some time with you. I hope that you'll tell the rest of the community that isn't here today about this and how it went. And of course, as I said at the start, if you have any suggestions about how we can improve this format to be more interactive or less interactive or any of those sort of things, let us know in the Discord or the Telegram. We'd love to hear what you thought about today. This will go up on a video as well, so if you want to share that with people in the community, that would be fantastic. I think I'd like closing out to say that a lot of what we do, as Josh mentioned before, like a lot of the best marketing that we ever receive is all through word of mouth. So I think as community members, one of the best things that you can do to help us and to help yourself if you're also connected to the project is to really do what you can and let people know that would be interested in what's happening around here about it as well, so that we can keep spreading the word and really when this messenger release comes out, we can get some really great feedback and make it a really fantastic experience for everyone around the world. So thanks for being here, and we'll see you next time we do this. Otherwise, stay tuned.
Cool. Thanks,
Bye,
guys.
people.
See you guys.